So with the recent Department of Labor rule changes, we've had a lot of business owners asking us questions about how their plans are affected. And I think the best way to answer those questions is to help them understand where they fit in the retirement planning landscape. Because if your company has a retirement plan that has $15 to $20 million or less, this definitely applies to you. And it's important you understand that retirement plans are a niche within the financial services industry. So when I say qualified retirement plans, I mean something like a 401k, a profit-sharing plan, a defined benefit plan. Working with a financial advisor who specializes in retirement plans versus working with a financial advisor is sort of like the difference between an orthodontist and a dentist. And while most financial advisors have a good understanding of 401k plans, their knowledge is really on the participant side of the plan. In other words, employees who are participants in the 401k plan, and they know a lot of things like how much you can contribute, how the catch-up contribution works, what the distribution options are when you leave. And that makes sense because those are the types of clients you're working with on a regular basis. They're individuals who are participants in a plan and they have to give them that type of advice regularly. That's a very different skill set from sitting down with the employer, with the company, and helping them design a retirement plan, helping them figure out, all right, what is the vesting schedule? Are you going to match? What are the ramifications of these decisions? That financial advisor has to have an understanding of ERISA law. They have to understand non-discrimination testing and a whole host of other plan design concepts that a traditional financial advisor just doesn't deal with on a daily basis. It's important because most retirement plans under $15 or $20 million are not set up by somebody who specializes in retirement plans. They're set up by the personal financial advisor of the owner. And that also makes sense. So this was probably when the company was smaller, the owner went to his financial advisor, the person that they go to for financial advice, and they said, hey, can you help me set up a retirement plan for my company? And the financial advisor is talking to probably one of his biggest clients, and even though he doesn't really know 401ks or profit-sharing plans, he says, all right, I'm going to figure this out. And so what do? They call a 401k wholesaler. This is somebody who works for a company who sells a 401k record-keeping platform. So it could be the Fidelity 401k wholesaler, the John Hancock wholesaler, the Nationwide retirement plan wholesaler. It could be the ADP wholesaler. There's a whole host of them, and they all have perfectly suitable products. So he'll call that 401k wholesaler. That wholesaler will come in, set up the plan for the business owner, and they set up the financial advisor as the broker of record on the plan. That means that advisor is now getting compensation on the assets in the plan. And everything's fine for a while. But what happens? Well, for one, the owner doesn't have a reasonable expectation around what services that advisor should be providing at the plan level. But he's meeting with the owner on a regular basis because he's his personal financial advisor, and they're typically reviewing the owner's individual accounts. And time goes by, the owner thinks he's getting good service, but the plan's not really getting reviewed properly because that advisor doesn't have that process built into his business. That's not what he does on a regular basis. Every time he's got to talk about the 401k, it's probably the only one he has in his whole book, and he's got to reinvent the wheel. And 3 or 4 or 5 years go by, and that plan goes from having 10 employees and $200,000 to having 50 employees and $5 million, and a lot changes. The plan can be repriced more aggressively, fees can be lowered, a lot of things that really aren't happening. In fact, if you were to ask for a retirement plan that has $15 to $20 million or less, the majority of owners, CFOs, CEOs, or head of HR, if they have them, if you were to ask them, they probably couldn't tell you what the fees are in the retirement plan, if those fees are reasonable based on industry standards, and what services they're receiving for what they're paying. And that's a problem. And it's a problem not just because they're probably not getting good value, maybe they're paying more than they need to, the investments in the plan aren't great, the participants aren't getting good education. All of that aside, it's a bigger problem because every one of those decision makers is a fiduciary. And that means that they're under a legal obligation to make decisions based on what's in the best interest of the participants in the plan. And guess where most of those fees are being paid out of? The majority of those fees are being paid pro rata from all of the participant accounts. So it's going to be really difficult to make the case to the Department of Labor that you're being a good fiduciary if you don't know what the fees are, if you don't know if those fees are reasonable, and if you don't know what services the participants are getting in exchange for those fees. So that said, if you can't answer those 3 questions, it's probably in your best interest to do a fiduciary review of the 401k plan. Now, here's the silver lining. That fiduciary review shouldn't cost you anything because somebody's already getting compensated on the plan. All you're doing is redirecting that compensation to someone who's going to provide these services for you.